and the second highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. The deal includes a $38 million signing bonus, the largest ever to a wide receiver. But Michael, as we always talk about too, just because this is the deal on paper doesn't mean with this year included, it's all the same numbers. But the deal is done. How are you unpacking things?
Well, I never doubted it would get done. My question is, what took so long to get this deal done? I mean, it fits perfectly within the structure of all the receivers. If you look at the new money, it's 34, which is slightly below Jefferson's new money. If you look at the old money, it's slightly below A.J. Brown. When you add when it's a 4-year extension, meaning they're going to carry this year, it's somewhere around the 30+ million range.
Yep.
How hard was that? See, that's what made it so mind-boggling, is because when you're doing deals, that's what the Ayuk contract is so hard. Ayuk is being unreasonable. He thinks he belongs near these guys. His numbers don't indicate that. There's the conflict. Whereas in this deal, Lamb belongs with these guys. He's played this way 4 years consistently. And so he got it done. So for me, my question is, this is all about, I didn't want to go out to Thousand Oaks. When it gets done on the Monday before, then that tells me he didn't want to go. He didn't want to have to deal.
He just didn't want to go to training camp. He just did. That's why we're waiting on the Trent Williams deal to come through as well.
So, because I think that's what it is. They just don't want to go to training camp, and so that's the only way to explain it.
I heard, especially considering Adam Schefter is the one who broke this news moments ago, I heard him earlier this morning on Get Up say that a lot of the final hurdle they were trying to get over was essentially around $1 million or so, quibbling back and forth, which all I thought was Jerry Jones could find that in his pocket for loose change with how much that organization is worth. But they finally come to an agreement. This is done. And he's going to get out there on the field, Michael, which you have said all along. CeeDee Lamb will be on the field week 1 for the Dallas Cowboys, who are a 2.5-point underdog against the Cleveland Browns in that game. But now that leads us to the other wide receiver, other than Ayuk, that's still trying to figure something out, Jamar Chase with the Cincinnati Bengals, who, unlike CeeDee Lamb, unlike Ayuk, Justin Jefferson, has 2 years remaining on his current deal. He's back out there on the practice field. He had been holding in, but he's back out there in pads, expected to be a full participant this week. What does that mean for Jamar Chase now?
Well, I think Chase is just going to wait for all these deals to get done, because I think Chase is clearly going to be better than all these deals. He wants to he's going to become the number 1 paid receiver, or very close to Jefferson. See, here's where there always gets a little rub, is like Aaron Donald's defensive tackle deal held up for a long, long time, because he was above and beyond everybody else. And his play was above and beyond everybody else. So that held up. That's where you're worried about with Chase. You don't want to do a deal too close where it's not going to hold up. But I think with this Lamb deal, the way it looks, Jefferson's deal is going to hold up. And I think Chase will be a little bit more, and they can get that deal done. I think that's kind of where, you have to take a look at this thing and see that it's all the numbers are there. It's practical on how to do it.
In terms of the league leaders for regular season receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, here's how the top of the odds boards shake out. Tyreek Hill, your favorite in both markets. In receiving yards, 6-1 favorite, followed by CeeDee Lamb right there at plus 650. Jamar Chase, 9-1. Justin Jefferson, 10-1. Receiving touchdowns, Tyreek Hill's a 9-1 favorite, co-favorite with CeeDee Lamb there, who last year, of course, was the second highest receiving yards total in the entire league. Jamar Chase, 10-1. Justin Jefferson, 11-1. When all's said and done, Michael, who's the best wide receiver in the league right now for you?
Tyreek Hill. It's not close.
Not close.
It's not. I mean, he changes the game. Chase is good, but Hill changes the game.
Okay.
Hill scares the living bejesus out of you. Just because you can't match up, you have nobody. When you look down your bench, you have nobody on your bench that can cover him. And he's got Barry Sanders' quickness with Randy Moss speed. That's a rare combination in an athlete. Some guys have great quickness, and they don't have that top-end speed. Some guys have that speed like Moss. But when you have the quickness and the elusiveness to break tackles when the ball's in his hands, whoa. Remember, this was an all Southwest Conference or whatever, Big 8, Big 12, whatever the hell the conference was. It was in college, he was a running back. He runs with power.
I don't think you're going to get a lot of disagreement from anybody around the league. Tyreek Hill is a different animal. They call him a cheetah for a reason. Last 2 cents here on the CeeDee Lamb Dallas Cowboys situation, Michael, because you said it. how did it take this long? Why did it take this long? And it feels like it just has to be a training camp situation. But with Jerry Jones making all of the comments that he has, going on the air every single day, talking about this, not talking about it. CeeDee Lamb even unfollowed the team, which is still just ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. I mean, we're not in high school. I mean, what are we doing?
I'm
away from you, Stormy. I just don't want to see you. I'm going to move my lot. I mean, like, come on.
I'll never understand that as a negotiating tactic, but
I mean, just don't go on Twitter. That's all.
To each his own there.
I mean, this is like that. Like, I could see unfollowing the Cowboys if their checks haven't cleared. I got that, right? Just for 4 years, if you really they've been missing payments. I get that, but they've made all the payments. It's fascinating to me how that happens. Where you just all of a sudden just let things slide away. But look, we knew he was going to get done. The Ayuk one's the strange one. Ayuk should have been done. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to pull out every hair on his head with this guy, because this guy he's not self-aware. And when you're not self-aware, it's hard to get a contract done. And it's a problem. I'm not saying Ayuk isn't a good player, but he's not in Lamb's league. He's not in Jefferson's league. He's not there yet. He's not demonstrated that over a consistent period of time. Do a short-term deal with him. I'm sure the 49ers would add money to the $14 million he's due this year and do a one-year deal and let him be somebody else's headache next year.
I think at the end of the day, he's going to be on the 49ers roster this year. We still have to await that news, and then hopefully we'll finally be done with all of this madness. But where I was going down that road with the Cowboys, Michael, was just last thought here. Do you think that any of these other deals for the Cowboys get done this year, whether it's Dak or Micah?
I'm glad you brought that up, because Ed Warner tweeted out, he had an interview with Jerry, and Jerry supported everything that I said in my our column 2 weeks ago that I wrote for VSiN about how that Packer game was really not sitting well with Jerry, that Jerry wasn't going to reward people for the horrendous play and the lack of effort, the lack of comprehensive unity from the team, the lack of execution. His best players play poor. His best coaches coach poor. He's not writing checks to that. I think that game had a lingering effect on Jerry, and he admitted it. He admitted it to the press. Ed Warner tweeted it out.
I think that's a great point, Michael. It was an ugly end of the season for a team that had such high hopes in the postseason. Things never come to fruition. Final year for Mike McCarthy under his contract. We'll see how things played out. We do have the guaranteed money, by the way, CeeDee Lamb, $100 million. Sound about right to you?
Yeah, I mean, it is. Look, to me, the guaranteed money it's never really what they say it is, because it's always going to have contingencies attached to it. But yeah, I mean, look, the guy's got 4-year extension. Right. And he's got a 5-year deal, 4 year. I mean, that's $20 million a year going to be guaranteed over the course of the contract. That's probably right, especially if he's making $31 million. He's getting 70% of it guaranteed.
Now, not quite at the same level as some of these other wide receivers that we have been talking about, Michael, but we did also see news over the weekend that the Chiefs have agreed to terms to re-sign wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. Was the, of course, lead wide receiver in the 2022 Super Bowl team. Went to the Patriots last year. He was released earlier this month. But you look at this pass catchers group for the Chiefs, Travis Kelce, Marquise Brown, who's on the shelf with the shoulder right now, Xavier Worthy, and then Rashee Rice. So they've got this group here. And Rashee Rice, who had a breakout year last season out of SMU, but I don't still know what's going on with that there. It seems like this would be an awesome wide receiver unit if they're all out there on the field.
Well, Rice is in a criminal investigation, and typically the National Football League, someone told me this in the league today, that typically the Goodell will not interfere with a criminal investigation until it's been settled by law enforcement. Once that happens, which probably will not happen until either he pleads something out with the Dallas police, or that or they gets a ticket or whatever. Once that's confirmed, then Goodell will take action. And that means for us as bettors, he's going to be playing on opening weekend against Baltimore. And he's probably going to play the whole season, because Goodell won't really react to this until the offseason once that investigation's over.
Okay. So that punishment, again, just to reiterate that, will come down at a later time, which does mean, like I said, this wide receiver unit, Michael, could be pretty good for Patrick Mahomes this year after all of the drops and all of the problems that there were. If he's on the field, if Hollywood Brown gets that shoulder healthy, he's on the field. Xavier Worthy's the fastest guy coming out of the combine. These things seem to be positive.
Yeah, no question. And I think, look, one thing about Smith-Schuster is he's played on a bad knee all last year. And that was a problem for him. And I don't know if he's healthy this year, but the Chiefs know him. It was being an inside slot receiver. I think Andy Reid was waiting for Justin Watson to come along, and that hadn't really mattered. It hasn't come as fast as he wants. Smith-Schuster, I'm sure, is very well liked in the locker room.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mahomes trusts him, so that's why they probably brought him back, and it wasn't very much.
Caught just 29 passes last year, 260 yards, 1 touchdown in 11 games. Justin Watson had some moments, but yes, a long way to go. Hasn't come along the way they expected. Kadarius Toney's still in that wide receiver room too, Michael. People forget Kadarius Toney does still exist and is a part of the Kansas City Chiefs organization. No matter how much people are asking for him just to go away. Just kidding. That's rude. I'm sorry, Kadarius Toney. Just don't clip this, all right? We're going to hit our first break of hour 2. Again, if you missed it, the breaking news of the day. CeeDee Lamb finally signs his deal. He's going to be out there on the field week 1 for the Dallas Cowboys as they take on the Browns. Pending contract still to wait and see on Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, Jamar Chase, and Hassan Reddick. Let's not forget about him over there in Jets country. When we come back, time for Step Into Michael's Office. Some people need a talking to. Michael's got the advice. We'll be right back.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Bonatoni, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
The appointments are lined up.
You waiting for somebody in there?
Got an appointment.
And it's not about what you want to hear, but what you need to hear.
It's not personal. It's strictly business.
It's time you and me had a private talk, Winger. Step into my office.
It's Step Into My Office with Michael Lombardi. Mr. Lombardi, we'll see you now.
Whether you need to hear the hard truths or just some sage advice, Michael Lombardi is always here to help. And Michael, we've got your first appointment in the office today. Mike Tomlin is stepping on in as he said he's going to make a decision on the starting quarterback role by the end of the work week, deciding, of course, between the veteran Russell Wilson, who he brings in, as well as Justin Fields in their final preseason game. Both led a touchdown drive on their respective series. Russell Wilson had just 1 series of work. Justin Fields played in 3. If you're talking to Mike Tomlin today, sitting down at the desk, what are you telling him needs to go into this decision-making process?
Well, I mean, look, far be it from me, Mike, to talk to you about something that you are far more of an expert on than I am. So let me say that. But from a personnel standpoint, from a GM standpoint, you know the coach and the X's and O's and the leadership of the team, which to me is really the most significant factor here. What we can't see as fans, as executives, you have to, the non-obvious. Which one's the best leader? Which one does the team rally around? Which one will be better in November than he is right now in September? Which one will help the other players become better players? I think those are the fundamental questions, because you and I both know we're trying to make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what, and that's really challenging. And so we've got to figure out these intangibles. Sometimes through leadership, through a player being selfless, through a player being self-aware, they allow other players to become better. And I think that's what we're gravitating towards. Who's going to protect the football? Who's going to get better in November and December? Who's going to rally the team around them? And who does the team believe in? Because you have the toughest job of anybody. You have to go into that building and announce a starter. And you got to sell it. You're going to have to sell it, because right now there's a fashion of your locker room that's pro Justin Fields. There's a fashion of your locker room that's pro Russell Wilson. There's a fashion in your locker room that thinks, why the hell did we let Mason Rudolph go? Right?
And I bet you Mike Tomlin is a little bit frustrated that nobody made it a clear and obvious choice for him one way or the other. But here we are. For me, at least, I would be shocked if Russell Wilson wasn't the QB1 week 1.
Me too.
And the odds market indicates as much. He's a minus 425 favorite there. Justin Fields 3-1 to start in that season opener. Let's go to another quarterback competition that I didn't realize was a competition, but Jacoby Brissett has been so bad that here we are. And Gerard Mayo is stepping into Michael Lombardi's office today after watching Drake May go 13-20, 126 yards and a touchdown on Sunday night, and fans calling for him to be the guy out the gates despite all of the talk this offseason about a need for patience and a development plan. After the game yesterday, Mayo did tell reporters that May is the second best quarterback on the team, but this morning on WEEI admitted May has outplayed Brissett. Should Mayo give May the opportunity to start week one? Where do you sit on this?
Well, Mayo, look, I think at some point you need to kind of find out. I didn't know you gave Alex Van Pelt the co-head coach title. I didn't know you did that. I didn't realize he was in charge of the entire offensive operation and that you weren't going to interfere. Maybe you might want to think about going down the hall and just stick your nose in there, because you're going to get fired if the offense doesn't go well. You can pass all the blame you want, but it's going to come back on you, because the one-loss record, last time I checked in Pro Football Reference, it shows up under your name. It doesn't show up, 1-0 Mayo, 0-1 Alex Van Pelt. So you might want to reconsider that. Look, I think the reality here is until you get your offensive line straightened out, I don't know how you can evaluate quarterbacks. The only chance you have to evaluate a quarterback is to have a good line play. I don't think it's fair to Brissett. I don't think it was fair to Drake May. Drake May had moments, but Drake May also didn't have moments. His first game, you let him throw 3 passes. Come on. So stick with the plan. Get through the month of September. Use that as a building block. You're not going to win the Super Bowl this year. I hate to tell you that. And you're not going to be a very good team. I hate to tell you that too. So you need to learn how to become a head coach. You need to learn how to become a better leader. And your team needs to learn how to execute better. And I think, to me, the one thing you don't want to do is ruin a young quarterback.
More young quarterbacks are ruined than they are developed. And when it comes to that offensive line, Michael, we saw Jacoby Brissett get injured early in that game, dealing with a little bit of a shoulder thing right now. We'll see ultimately how that plays out. But not only are the Patriots not winning the Super Bowl, Michael, this year, they're the favorite to be the worst team in the NFL. They're the favorite to be the lowest scoring offense in the NFL. Last year, bottom 3 in the league for points per game, offensive EPA, yards per play. And people don't really expect them to get better. Give this kid an opportunity to learn and develop. At least that's my 2 cents of it. Gerard Mayo, if you were in my office today, that's what I would tell you. Sit him down. Deshaun Watson has the appointment next. Quarterback, of course, for the Cleveland Browns, did not play in the NFL preseason. He's coming off a year in which he had a season-ending shoulder injury. Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski told reporters Watson will be ready to roll for week 1, and he's very confident in his off-season work. What should Watson's approach be as he preps for the season opener against the Cowboys, Michael?
Well, I think the one thing you have to do, Deshaun Watson, is not personalize the contract. You didn't force them. They were not held at gunpoint to give you that deal. Let them carry that burden. Let them carry that negativity. Don't let it land on you. You didn't tell them you had to pay that much money. They just went ahead and did it. They negotiated with themselves. God bless your agent and you. But I think ultimately you got to build this thing slower. Since you have not played a lot, and that's been kind of customary for you over the last 3 years, whether it's been suspension or injury, you haven't played a lot of football. You got to build it one block at a time. You're going to have to go slow. Find things that you like to do, execute that, and build along. And let the Browns defense help you win games, not necessarily think you've got to capture the game. And when Chubb comes back and you're finally hitting your gear week 5 or week 6, now you can start to take off. But I would be very patient and not try to force things. Be very self-aware of where you are in terms of your development within the framework of this new offense and within the framework of your shoulder rehabilitation.
This is the year where we're going to find out if Deshaun Watson can ever get back that glimmer of ability that he showed when he was with the Houston Texans. By the way, that Cowboys opener at BetMGM and DraftKings, we're still sitting at the Browns laying 2.5, but a number of these other books, Circa, Superbook Sports, Westgate, go down the line, South Point, all sitting at 2 right now. So a little bit of money back now, maybe, that CeeDee Lamb has officially signed his new deal. 4-year, $136 million extension, $100 guaranteed for CeeDee Lamb for anyone just joining us. Let's go to Anthony Richardson, quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. Michael looked a little erratic, let's say, in the preseason finale this past Thursday against the Bengals. Had a pick-6 after opening the game with the touchdown drive. We know how talented he is, the dual threat ability, but only played in 4 games during his rookie season. Only completed 2 of them start to finish and completed less than 60% of his pass attempts. If Richardson is sitting at the table today, how are you advising him to focus ahead of his sophomore season against the Texans week 1?
I think the goal for you, Anthony, is to try to complete 60% of your passes. In preseason, you're at 55%. You just didn't find you can't have the kind of throws that you had against Cincinnati, where 4 feet behind the receiver and goes for a pick six. That's just unacceptable, because here's what's going to happen to you. You're going to be in a lot of close games. You got a good team. You're going to move the football. When the 50-minute mark comes into play, and then you've got 10 minutes remaining in the game, what determines the outcome of those last 10 minutes is your accuracy, your ability to put the ball in the right spot, your ability to make critical third down plays, your ability to keep the ball or extend drives to score to win the game. And you've got to play your best at that point. And I think one of the things that will allow you to play better is to keep reminding Shane Steichen that it's not about more plays, it's about execution of the plays you feel best with. Because when you're playing fast and you're playing free, it's very few people are going to be able to compete with your athleticism. That's what you need to do. You can't be hindered by, what should I do here? What should I do there? Mother, may I step here? Mother, may I step there? You got to cut it loose.
Last one here for you. Florida State head coach Mike Norvell stepping in the office after watching Georgia Tech upset the former ACC favorite in Dublin week 0. Yellow Jackets' first win versus a top 10 team since 2015. Walk-off 44-yard field goal. If you're Norvell, Michael, what message does he need to send to his team to move forward in a positive way this season?
Well, I think the hardest thing for any young coach to do, and you're a young coach, Mike, is to evaluate your own team. I think you got to go back and look at what you thought your team was and how it played against ACC competition. And I think you've got to do a better job of understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. One thing about losing football games, you don't drink the Kool-Aid. You don't become intoxicated. Wins do that, not losses. So now you know, what are you going to have to do? How do you have to play to win a game? That's really the flight home from Dublin to Tallahassee, was all about you answering one fundamental question. How do I have to play to win ACC games? And only you can answer it.
And now listen, yes, the odds are against you when you start off the season this way, literally and figuratively. When you look at the odds board, they're minus 425 to miss the college football playoff now. You cannot let one game set the tone for the rest of your season, all right? It's not over yet. There's still a chance. You're still fourth on the odds board to win the ACC. We'll see how this thing plays out. We're going to stick with college football when we come back. College football analyst for the Action Network, Michael Calabrese, is joining us next. We'll get his reaction to week 0 and best bets. Looking ahead to week 1 and the futures board. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Bonatoni, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Before the break, we were talking about Mike Norvell and Florida State's loss to Georgia Tech in week 0. I forgot to mention, Michael, the epic passive-aggressive troll job from ESPN's Kirk Herbstreit on Twitter after the game as well, who, of course, conspiracy theory FSU fans absolutely hate the way things played out last year in the college football playoff. He tweeted, "Man, tough loss for the Noles over in Ireland to a good Georgia Tech team. The great news is with the new 12-team playoff, there's still plenty of opportunities to climb back into the bracket, regroup, and keep battling." And especially after FSU booed him on game day, all this stuff. It is
got killed.
So well played.
He got killed. Yeah, he got killed on game day. I mean,
Hilarious.
Nick Saban and him were talking about that too. So interesting.
So well played. FSU goes from the favorite to win the ACC to now 6-1. They're minus 425 to miss the college football playoff. That was one of a lot of underdog ATS winners in week 0. To talk all things college football, let's get into it. Michael Calabrese joins us here on the Progressive Guest Line, college football analyst for the Action Network. Heck of a weekend for the Dogs, my friend. How did you unpack things? And if we stick with Florida State here for a moment as well, like, what do you think about this group moving forward?
It's going to be difficult when you look at that stat that went viral about the air yards of each, pass attempt by DJU. It makes it very difficult to reinvent yourself or to have confidence in a quarterback that went through fall camp, and yet when the live bullets were flying, you weren't trusting him to put the ball downfield. So I think it could be a difficult time for Florida State in the ACC. But also, when you look at both underdogs who, one pulled it off in Georgia Tech and Nevada almost doing the same, which would have been a huge upset against another ACC opponent, both of them played keep away. Georgia Tech had 2 drives at the end of the game that totaled 12 minutes and 55 seconds, and Florida State only had 1 drive in the last let's call it quarter and a half of the game. That's the recipe in modern college football, with the clock running on first downs to really have an opportunity to shrink down the possessions. And when you do so, you're giving yourself a better opportunity. It's like a college basketball team who's outgunned, who wants to play slow, use the shot clock, reduce those possessions. So I think you're going to see something similar with some of these underdogs here in week one who are looking to shock the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's so elementary. How do we have to play the game to win? Well, we got to slow the game down. No, we play fast. Okay, you're going to lose 75-0 if you want to play fast, right? I love that logic. It's just ridiculous. I think one of the teams that understands who they are and how they have to play, and they put the fear of God into everybody, is North Dakota State. And Deion's going to walk in there and think, uh-oh, that line has moved significantly to North Dakota State. What are your thoughts on that game, Michael?
This one's screaming under for me. 59.5. I'm happy to take it all the way down to 57.5 and still play under the total in this one. And Stormy, you're getting the old offensive coordinator from Colorado, Aztec Fast at SDSU. He's going to bring the tempo. But last year, about halfway through the season, Coach Prime said, my quarterback, who's also my son, is getting killed. My defense is too thin. We have to slow down the tempo to protect both. So he makes the switch at offensive coordinator, goes to Pat Shurmur, who shaved 17 plays per game off of their pace. So I think when they were getting all the attention last year in September and early October, they were lighting up scoreboards, they were playing faster, they were throwing the ball a lot. This is a new Colorado team in this spot. So I think they're going to play a little bit slower. They're going to huddle more often. You're going to see different packages offensively that's going to give the defense an opportunity to switch. And then, as you mentioned it, North Dakota State, they have the same identity for the last 2 decades. Even though they have a new head coach, they want to pound the rock. They were 6th in time of possession last year at the FCS level. And they have a poor man's Taysom Hill at quarterback. When Cole Payton comes in, the numbers game starts working in terms of their running game. They get that extra hat on a hat, and they just bully teams. Final stat here, third down defense last year for the Buffaloes, 125th in the FBS. They couldn't get off the field. North Dakota State on third downs, they finished 3rd in conversions across all of FCS football.
I know that they did slow it down, Colorado did, but I must have missed the part where it helped save Shedeur Sanders from getting lit up, because I think that still continued the rest of the way during the season.
I love it.
No, I love that insight, though, into this game. I think that it's a creative way to look at things. And when you look at the Mountain West, because you talked about Nevada and New Mexico and how well they played this past weekend as underdogs, I want to know your thoughts on the Mountain West as a whole, because if the bottom of the league is actually a little bit better than we expect, then maybe the top of the league could be too. A lot of people like Boise State. UNLV took a massive step last year. I know you're looking at UNLV week 1.
Yeah, UNLV, I think in the first week, I'm not afraid of Houston. Going on the road, I'll take the points. I'll take the money line outright to win, because this Houston team is still a mess defensively. Doug Belk out as defensive coordinator. They bring in some interesting new pieces, including a new coordinator in Sheil Wood, who was great at Troy and great at Tulane, but he doesn't have the horses yet. He only has 2 returning starters. Against a UNLV team, I'm going to plant my flag right now for Matt Sluka. This is going to be the breakout star of September. He was an absolute animal running the football at the FCS level at Holy Cross. He comes in now coming off of a Walter Payton Award finalist season in Brennan Marion's go-go offense. Whenever you can add in a dual threat to this particular offensive style, it's a nightmare for opposing defenses, and he doesn't have to do it all on his own. Ricky White is not just a G5 All-American, he's an AP All-American out at wide receiver, and Jaden Thomas was a freshman All-American running back, so he has the weapons. Can he improve a little bit as a passer? He certainly did in his 3 years as a starter up at Worcester, Mass at Holy Cross, so I have a lot of faith in them. And long-term, I love the hire of Willie Fritz for Houston, but he's not a pure miracle worker. This offense has questions on the offensive line, and they lost their 2 best skill position players at wide receiver in Matthew Golden and Samuel Brown. So I think it's going to be a bit of a transition for him in year 1 in Houston.
Okay, let's talk about one of the games that I'm kind of fascinated with. South Carolina, they lose Spencer Rattler. They're trying to rebuild the program. They get a cupcake in Old Dominion coming in there. They're 3-touchdown favorite. You still would lay the points with South Carolina.
See, I'm glad that you accurately described ODU as a cupcake, because a lot of people would look at them last year and they made it to a bowl game. They won 6 games. Their 6 wins were by an average of 3.8 points per game. They were getting by the skin of their teeth. They were getting blocked field goals. They were getting safeties. They were scoring on the last play of the game. They were constantly living on the edge. And defensively, I think they're going to take a big step backward. Yes, they have the tackling king, Jason Henderson, who may become the FBS all-time leader in tackles. But outside of him, there's a ton of holes on this defense. They lose Wayne Matthews to Michigan State, which was a huge loss because he was one of their few players that could create havoc and get into opposing backfields. When you look at their deficiencies defensively last year, they were 127th in terms of pass rush, according to Pro Football Focus. They are not going to get a finger on Lenora Sellers in this game. And if he has time to operate, look out for a breakout performance from Nick Harbor. 6'5", Olympic-level sprinter speed. He just needs to break this game wide open, take a little bit of pressure off a South Carolina team that clearly was reeling down the stretch. It did not pan out the way they were hoping for last year, but they're still only 1 game away from bowl eligibility out of the SEC. So I think South Carolina is underrated, and Old Dominion is coasting a bit on 6 wins, many of which were a gift last fall.
Michael Calabrese of the Action Network joining us here on the Progressive Guest Line. This is the Lombardi Line on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Big picture, I saw the news yesterday that Texas Tech now is the latest to begin doing availability reports and making media and others aware of injury. The Big Ten, we saw them come out with it last year. The MAC is joining that. There were reports that the SEC might begin to do it this season as well. I haven't seen an update on that front yet. How impactful is that for us as bettors? That some of these conferences, some of these teams are stepping out, recognizing this is important, especially for those of us from the betting standpoint, they're critical.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword because if you consider yourself a sharp and you put in the work and you're following the beat writer, sometimes you can get ahead. You can beat a sports book to line movement by 2 or 3 hours before news becomes mainstream. But at the same time, the quality of those leaks, sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes you get burned where they'll say this guy's not going to play. He hasn't practiced all week. And then all of a sudden you flip on the game. He's out there as the QB1 or, as a meaningful ball carrier. So I'm totally in favor of this. I want uniformity across the entire sport. This just goes to speak to the issue without having a true leader at the top of the institution. The NCAA is kind of rudderless still to this point. So more so it's conference by conference, as you pointed out. And I think as the dominoes start to fall, I think we're going to get closer to uniform rules in terms of player availability, hopefully by next season.
Michael, real quick, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Mike Elko knows Riley Leonard. I think Mike Elko will do a much better job than the great Jimbo Fisher as he carries his money away from College Station. But handicap that game for us. It seems that all the money's coming in on A&M, and the Notre Dame loyalists usually bet.
Yeah, to my knowledge at this point, outside of an offensive lineman injury for Notre Dame, there should be a lot of enthusiasm for what the Irish can do offensively with Riley Leonard as their quarterback. The kind of stability that he brings, being able to move the chains with his legs, I think gives them an opportunity to be, let's call it a top 30 offense. And if they are, that's the question for Notre Dame, because defensively, I love all the pieces. They have playmakers at all 3 levels. I think this is going to turn into a rock fight. And also, this game, I think, is going to come down to a data point for the College Football Committee later this season when you look at who's in that 8 to, let's call it 11 range of those at-large bids for the college football playoffs. So just a critical game right away for Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman wanted the opportunity to coach at a premium level. Unfortunately, that means you get in these pressure, hot seat situations, even in week 1. So a huge game. I'm probably going to go under in that one. I respect both of these defenses.
Yeah, total sitting right now, 46.5. Michael, so appreciate your time. Thanks for the insight.
Great job, Michael. Really appreciate it. Welcome back anytime, Michael.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Michael Calabrese, the Action Network. You can catch his work there. You can also follow him at East Breeze, Brese, on X. Coming up next on the Lombardi Line, this Week 1 AFC West clash has creeped to more than a field goal spread, and bettors are back in this rookie quarterback ATS to open the season. Should we agree with the masses or go against the grain? We'll be right back.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
The CeeDee Lamb holdout in Dallas is over. The star wide receiver and the Cowboys agreed to a massive 4-year extension worth $136 million, $100 million guaranteed, and sets a wide receiver record $38 million signing bonus. He's the second highest paid non-quarterback now in NFL history. And Michael, with that news coming out earlier this hour, we have already seen an immediate market reaction on the week 1 line for the Dallas Cowboys season opener against the Cleveland Browns. Had been sitting 2.5 pretty steadily here for a while now. Now it's down to 2 everywhere. Any early thoughts?
I don't know why anybody thought he was going to miss. I mean, I don't know why it took so long. Obviously, he didn't want to visit Thousand Oaks and spend time there. Maybe if he signed the contract in California, he would have got taxed, and maybe he wanted to avoid that. Good possibility. However, that being said, I mean, I never doubted it. I mean, this is why I think sometimes, especially in the offseason, especially in college football, we'll see the betting market react to perception. I mean, the perception was what? He was going to miss? No chance he was going to miss. He never was going to miss. They don't miss game checks. Trent Williams isn't going to miss, And I don't know about Hassan Riddick. I can't explain that one. That's on a whole other level. But they're not going to miss. And so Brandon Ayuk, same thing. I mean, I have no idea what he's thinking about or doing. So actually, I think the Brandon Ayuk contract becomes harder because I'm sure he thinks he deserves CeeDee Lamb money. I think it's probably harder for John Lynch and the 49ers to get that thing done. But I don't know why the market would have reacted because he was always going to play. It's good for the Cowboys. They still have a lot of questions. Their offensive line is certainly in question. The fact that they played from in front in so many games. They're signing journeyman defensive lineman Jordan Phillips, Linville Joseph, to come in and play defensive tackle, which tells you they're not happy with Maisie Smith, and they're going to have a hard time stopping the run, which is what Cleveland wants to do with a sure shoulder quarterback in Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm. That it is interesting, Michael, when you see the market react to information, even though it's obviously it's newsworthy that he did sign the extension and what the worth is and all of those things. Of course, it is newsworthy. But it's something, to your point, that we all expected to have happen. You wrote about it last week. You have been adamant in the discussion that CeeDee Lamb was going to be here. Micah Parsons even told you, his teammate told you for the last couple of weeks that there was no doubt about it in his opinion that he was going to be on the field week 1. So it's the market reacting to update when it comes to who's going to be on the field when. The Brandon Ayuk stuff is very interesting here. And, I don't like talking about the situation. I just want to know what the result is ultimately going to be. I hate it. But at the end of the day, I firmly believe the way you did about CeeDee, I believe about Ayuk. Maybe I could be wrong in this instance, but that he's going to be out there on the field for San Francisco. He has turned down these other deals elsewhere for a reason. He wants his cake and he wants to eat it too. And are the 49ers going to cave to all of his demands? No. But at the end of the day, he wants to play football and earn a paycheck. He's going to be there.
Right. And he needs to be there. Look, the reality of it is at some point he's got to play. And at some point, the 49ers have got to say enough is enough, right? I've been saying that for 2 months now, for 2 weeks now. Enough is enough. Either you play or you take the deal at New England. If that's what you want, this is it. It's either now or never. And, the problem is Ayuk thinks he deserves to be in the top 5 paid. That's not the case. And he has an agent who's not really talking common sense to him. Look, do a short-term deal. Come back to the 49ers and take a 2-year deal at less per year, but know you're going to get back to the market. You want to take that risk? Every time a player wants to be paid like everybody else without the numbers, my answer would always be, how about you take a short deal and prove it till you can do it? We'll take that risk. We'll see if you can do it. Well, no, I want my guarantee. Well, if you want your guarantee, contracts are about time and money. You can't have both. If you want money, we need time. If you don't want time, you get less money. It's not that complicated, Stormy.
Yep. There were reports, of course, that the Steelers had a deal in place. All the 49ers had to do was pick up the phone, but that Ayuk and the 49ers had one final hurdle on a deal of their own to see if they could get there. Then the Commanders apparently re-entered the chat this past week after letting Jahan Dotson walk. So it's a whole thing. Who ultimately knows? And I'm not saying that Brandon Ayuk isn't a very talented wide receiver. Like, he is very, very good, and he does make a difference as a downfield threat for the 49ers offense.
Yes.
But at the same point, he doesn't deserve that type of money as some of these other guys yet. And that's where you're talking about him living in a little bit of like a la-la land situation here. So We'll see how it plays out. I told you I hate talking about it, so I'm only going to give it so much of our time any day on the program. The last few minutes, let's look at some of these week one line moves and things that have shifted in addition to the Cowboys and Browns. To pay off the tease, the Chargers-Raiders game, the Chargers were laying 3, and we've seen them take a little bit money now to be a bit of money now creeping over that field goal, -3.5 against the Raiders in the opener. 88% of the handle is backing the Chargers here, despite so many players getting trapped in an elevator, Michael. They are getting backed. What do you think?
I'm going to keep writing this on my notes every morning, is don't let preseason influence your thoughts. Because there's certain situations where preseason can make you, for example, the Chargers, they haven't looked good. They haven't looked pristine. They haven't looked like they're perfect. However, that being said, I really think that they're going to be a good team. I think they've got a chance to be a good team. And because of that, I kind of believe that this line is going to be a little bit, to me, I would favor taking the Chargers here because of that. So, but, I don't want to let that preseason, because when I go back and look at my notes from last year, as I get ready for week one, there's always a team that you weren't sure of, Rams. Okay, they did nothing in the preseason. Boom, they come out and play well week one. So I think you have to be really careful. I think the Chargers fit in that category. I think they're going to play well. Here's why. I think their pad level is going to be really good. I think they're going to be very physical. I think they're going to be in really good shape. And I think the quarterback's going to make some plays. I think those 4 things. Now, are they perfect? No. Joe Alt's got to play better at right tackle. But this should be a blue or red chip offensive line. I didn't include him in my breakdown this week on the GM Shuffle in blue or red chips because they just haven't been there and they haven't been healthy. But with Slater and all the tackles and Johnson, they should be improved inside. And Harbaugh's going to run the football. And I think the Raiders are going to have a hard time scoring against anybody.
These betting splits, by the way, compliments of DraftKings. You see the ticket split, so the amount of bets that are coming in, split very evenly, 50-50, but 87% of that handle right in with you, Michael, and backing the Chargers in that spot. I also can't believe you didn't even laugh or say anything about my elevator comment. I was cracking up at Jim Harbaugh talking about these poor guys stuck in an elevator, and he talks about the team building exercise and how he wishes he was in there.
Yeah. Only Harbaugh. I mean, at $200 a day plus expenses, I'm sure he wishes he was in there to figure out a way to get him out. I mean, obviously, it's a good problem to have. You give the team, hey, how do we get out of here? Let's solve this. And of course, Herbert did exactly what great leaders do. Is he solved it. He figured it out. Okay, guys, calm down. I got this, right? We're going to handle this.
They had to call the fire department.
Maybe that's what Mike Tomlin should do to decide who should start for the Steelers. Put him and Justin Fields in an elevator and say, okay, which one figures a way to get out?
Have all the starters plus Justin Fields and Russell Wilson in the elevator. All right, guys, let's create a plan. I loved all of the social media talk, by the way, that Jim Harbaugh probably did plan this. Obviously, he didn't, but of course, Jim Harbaugh would plan that, right? That's a team building exercise for him. He's going to do everything with a, relentless effort and unknown to mankindness, whatever it is. All right, I got one more here for you. The Bengals and Patriots, Michael. This line continues to move. We're seeing the opener at 8. Creeped up to 9. There are 9.5s out there on DraftKings. 73% of the handle back in the Bengals. And we have talked a lot about how this is probably going to be the most likely used team when it comes to Circa Survivor coming up here. But fade or follow the money on Bengals Pats?
Yeah, I think you follow the money here. I really do. I mean, look. Here's what I will say about the Patriots. They're not going to be as good on defense as they were. They did, even though he was making pizzas in South Boston, the defensive coordinator, head to coach, was a really good defensive coach. And he understands how to play the game. And he understands how to take away the opponent. I mean, ask any offensive coordinator about that around the National Football League. Not that DeMarcus Covington's not a good coach. I'm not suggesting that. But you're losing a lot of brain power in that room. You really are. I think they're in for a long year. I mean, New England, to me, has, their execution is not very good. When you got linemen running into each other on plays, you got too many false starts. What's going on? And then Mayo admitted as such that he has nothing to do with the offense, that's all on Alex Van Pelt. You're the head coach. You're in charge of everything.
We should have official word on who the starting quarterback is in New England at some point this week, according to head coach Gerard Mayo. But that has been a more interesting quarterback competition than I think any of us really anticipated based on the comments previously earlier this offseason, how they were going to handle Drake May. And what a weird situation it is that we're talking about fading the. There are people, Michael, that their strategy is going to be to fade the Patriots early on in the season, see how many they can get in Circa Survivor, which, by the way, for anybody who missed it, episode 1 of the 5-part docu-series Circa Survivor: The Quest for $9.2 million came out last week. You can still watch that on YouTube, but episode 2 is dropping today. So go to YouTube, watch episode 1, and then tonight live at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern, you can watch episode 2. There you go. I've got you covered. That is a wrap for Michael and I today. Sharp Money is coming up next. Don't go anywhere. VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We are a network of sports